There have been many actually, and if I would zoom out a bit, for all marketers and all brands across categories, right? They today look at Twitter for two clear goals. One, if they are about to launch something new in the market, right, and that could be probably a message, a product, or a service, or even a purpose statement. Second, to connect with conversations, whether those conversations are around sports, entertainment, news, or it could be even conversations that today are mainstream, which are beyond what we would call as conversations around entertainment and sports, right? Which is about joining an existing thread in a conversation and being the brand that can seamlessly enter. When you look at both those categories, we saw massive success, and we've seen quite many launches across some of the more dominant categories, as you would see, whether it was tech and OEM, where multiple companies were about to release their flagship phones. You've seen those launches happen in a world where launches around ground were actually gone completely away. Twitter became the virtual roof for those launches to happen, right? And as we say, people on Twitter are are one of the most differentiated set of audience that today a marketer can really leverage, because they were looking for that influence and that velocity and the drivers of the conversations, because every launch was as important in this year, right? And so that's that. What we also saw was a lot of diverse categories that emerged, right? You would always imagine the media brands actually very active, the tech being active. But as digital was suddenly fundamental and foundational for every brand in every category, whether it is entertainment, brands like Unacademy, White Hat Junior, or whether it is fintech, brands like Cred or Paytm, many such brands were actually looking at Twitter right there in the marketing mix, right? It was important for those messages to reach. It was important for services that were actually seeing quite a large uptake, because of everything suddenly being leapfrogged into digital, as people had probably not many choices but to sit back and consume more services through their phones and smart TVs, right? So we've seen a lot of diversification of campaigns. And if I were to now use this opportunity to pick one or two and speak more about those campaigns in detail, one of the things that we saw was, and all of us were very excited about, the signal of hope. And sports bring hope back in the country like no other conversation. So Star Sports being obviously a brand and a publisher that actually had evolved completely in 2020 on how to engage fans that are no longer on the ground, right? You had Indian Super League that was running. You had Indian Super League that was actually about to host the finals in Goa, but actually there were no fans in the stadium. One great partnership we saw both the Star Sports and Indian Super League at that time was they actually leveraged Twitter to start a campaign, which was hashtag True Love, and that was basically a rallying cry to the fans of football, of Indian football, and the tournament to come and cheer their favorite team in the finals. And those tweets wouldn't just become tweets that will stay on the timeline. Those tweets will actually just go beyond, go inside that stadium, and actually be printed on confettis that actually was blasted when the trophy celebration was happened. And I think that was a very meaningful case to show how you could be home yet together, and celebrate both the hope and the excitement that comes with sports. And that carried on, right? The moment that IPL was officially confirmed, Star Sports again was right there as the driver of the conversations. Knowing Twitter is obviously one of the largest virtual stadiums that you would ever find, right, with the most passionate supporters of cricket or sports beyond cricket. For IPL, it was great for them to leverage the campaign to really remind people when the matches were starting, because they were starting 7:30 p.m. this time versus what the time has been for a decade, right? And collaborating with their creative partners and media partners on actually launching campaigns that could remind people of the match, using the takeover products on Twitter that did offer them the most valuable impressions and the receptive audience that they could garner to actually announce that the sports are back. So that's that. And if I could move from launches to think about a great example of connecting with an existing conversation. Samsung has been a brand that's done both launch and connect really well this year with us and with their creative partners. And one of the conversations and themes that we've seen on Twitter is actually around K-pop. And K-pop is a phenomena like anything, right? Both in terms of volume and the fandom it involves. And when Samsung Galaxy was actually launching S20 Plus, which was a special BTS edition, they looked at Twitter knowing their existing audience that is obviously quite high in both volume and the passion they have. And they launched a really exciting quiz, which was the S20 Plus BTS quiz, which was just few questions around testing how much people know about this new special edition, questions that were intersecting both with pop culture around K-pop and the phone launch. And that was a great success of a brand connecting with the conversation, yet able to drive the product message. And there are many such examples that I could obviously speak on. But to conclude, what we have seen is both for brands that actually were launching, brands that were connecting with an upcoming trend or an existing conversations, they've been able to really leverage both the influence of Twitter and the public conversational nature of Twitter to its fullest this year. Thanks for the question. What I would do is I would want to zoom out more from the spender's perspective. It's about the diversified categories that we saw, right? Just as I spoke earlier, since digital was no longer probably one part of the strategy, it was the strategy for multiple brands, multiple verticals, right? Whether you were in retail, whether you were in CPG, or whether you were in BFSI, digital advertising obviously has shown significant amount of growth through the pandemic and post-pandemic. And Twitter was right there as one of the most crucial marketing mix vehicles, if you would call it, what you could leverage. What we saw was as great as categories tech, OEM, media, and entertainment were for us, they continued. We had probably even a higher amount of engagement across all their launches, right? If you think about Prime Video coming with their movies, coming with series and titles, they looked at Twitter to ensure that they were breaking the trailers, they were announcing when's the show going live, and leveraging all the takeover products that we have, and more so going into even the conversational nature of the platform, right? The ideas were very conversational. They were connected to the theme of the shows, and some of the ad products that we had in terms of what today a creative and a media team would look into. It was beyond just sort of things that would actually be just ad placements. They were bespoke solutions that were created for them to actually leverage and find that fandom. And if you go beyond those, what we saw was entertainment and fintech categories emerge, like I spoke about. So most importantly, I think in terms of the conversion that you spoke about, what we saw was it was really important for brands to come in close contact with their customers, right? Because there was this general sense of everyone being so distant, right? Uh, and being a platform that is immediate and real time, one of the biggest sort of ROI for any brand was to start building that trust again, right? Start making that difference, whether it's to probably our emotional security, our financial security, or a physical security, right? Whichever brand you may be. That was the biggest thing. It was important for brands to build that equity. It was also important for brands to come across as human and talk with the audience and speak what they are doing, probably for their most immediate stakeholders, right? Which is whether they're employees, whether they're partners, and obviously at society at large. So I think the ability to drive meaningful statements and actually earn a lot of goodwill and respect because of that was the best conversion that we would have seen, and the measurement that we will hold at in really high regard. Which, apart from all the media engagement numbers that every brand saw, successfully very very high this year, just because of the increase in uptake on both users on Twitter, the time they spend on Twitter, the consumption of Twitter, whether it's video or just the habit of tweeting.